to the farm with the red door. Today I have a really delicious recipe to share with you. I've been making buttermilk biscuits for a long time, probably 35 years, and they didn't ever turn out the way you would see in a magazine or a cooking show with a big, beautiful, tall, flaky biscuits. They were always good, but they never were quite what I was looking for, and so I would change recipes and try different things. And it wasn't until I learned a certain technique that I realized it was all in the technique on how your biscuits turn out. And so that is what I'm going to share with you guys today. The technique on how to make buttermilk biscuits. Now, if you've never made buttermilk biscuits before, or they don't have to be buttermilk, but regular biscuits, if you've never made them before, well then that's great, because you're not going to have to try to find the technique that works to get perfect buttermilk biscuits and get discouraged and quit making them. So if this is your first time, then you're going to learn right off and you're going to start having success, because it isn't hard at all. It takes about 20 minutes to make a sheet of them, and they are tall and they're flaky and they're moist and they are delicious. And so I'm going to share with you what you need to do to get them that way. Now, I'm just showing you the technique here, but if you want the full printed recipe, go down below and click the link, and that will take you to my blog where you can print out the recipe for these biscuits. So I'm doing a full recipe today, and I'm starting with flour. I'm just using all-purpose flour, and then we're going to put baking soda and baking powder and salt into this flour. Now you're just going to want to give it a little stir to incorporate all that. And then this is the biggest tip right here that you need to do to get very flaky buttermilk biscuits. So I used to use shortening to start with, and then I banned that from my kitchen, and for health reasons. And then I started using real butter, and that's key. But the main thing is to have your butter frozen and to grate it on a cheese grater. And it is going to, you could put big pieces of butter in there and do it with a pastry blender, but it's a lot of work. And when you do it with a cheese grater, everything is going to be, little uniform pieces of cheese. They're all going to be the same cheese, and you're going to be able to disperse them evenly throughout the biscuits. And when the science behind this, when you have cold butter and it's in your biscuit, and when it's in the oven, and when the heat, it starts melting that butter, it lets off steam, and it kind of like pushes up like that, and it will make the biscuits rise much higher. And so you want to have it be cold. You don't, whenever you work with pastry biscuits or pie crust or anything, you want it to be very cold. And then, but especially with biscuits, because you want that freeze. You don't want it to be warm and melted, because you want it to be like a cold piece of butter. And then when it starts getting hot, it will start steaming, and it will puff up. And that will make a huge difference on the height of your biscuits. So that's one of the tips on having really tall, beautiful biscuits. So we're just going to grate. I just took it out of the freezer, so you don't want it to be soft at all. But I'm just going to grate the whole thing into here. And an easy way to get it off of the cheese grater is to just put some flour in there and to just kind of rub it over, and then the cheese will just fall right out. If you try and do it without the flour, it'll just smear all over your cheese grater. Alright, so you're going to want to just real carefully with your hands just work this in, and just, get all the, kind of very carefully with your hands, don't mush the butter, but just real carefully break all the butter up so that it's not sticking to each other. And you just want it to be evenly dispersed amongst all the flour. So normally you would do this, like I said, with a pastry blender, and it's a lot of work to get like a tablespoon of cold butter to be broken up. This is just super quick and easy and guaranteed to be, you know, even pieces. All right, now you're gonna want to make like a well, like kind of a divot in the middle so that it'll hold all the buttermilk. And then we're going to add the buttermilk. All right, so now we're going to add the buttermilk. Now, if you didn't want to make buttermilk biscuits, you just wanted to make regular biscuits, then you would use regular milk, but that's going to change the amount of like baking soda and baking powder in the recipe. So this is a specific recipe for buttermilk, so you need to use buttermilk. And if you find another recipe for regular biscuits that just uses milk, that's fine. Just use the technique that I'm giving you and your biscuits will turn out great. So we're just going to pour the buttermilk right into the middle here, and then we're going to really slowly mix it. We don't want to overwork the dough. That's the thing also with working with any kind of pastry, is you don't want to mix and mix and mix. You want to do it the least amount possible, because that's going to give you a tender, flaky biscuit. But if you overwork the dough, it's going to be tough and hard, and just the more and more you work it, it's just going to become like a hockey puck almost. So you really want to be careful to work it the least amount necessary. So we're just going to stir it up and work with it, and then we'll move on to actually making the biscuits. Alright, so you're going to want to lightly flour your countertop where you're going to be rolling them out. Don't put much. And then just turn it out onto the board there. And I do put just a little dusting of flour over the top so it doesn't stick to my hands. Alright, so we're going to begin to roll it out, and we're going to keep it pretty thick because I like to get my biscuits just as thick as possible. We'll do it. If you can see this, it's about that thick right there. So we're going to cut the biscuits now, and that's where another tip is going to come in on how to keep the biscuits really tall and beautiful. So I have a biscuit cutter. A lot of people use the lids of canning jars, but I don't like that because it kind of holds them from being any taller than this. I like to have a big, deep cookie cutter that, like, the top of it, it's open. There's not like a rim, so that, you know, I could cut the biscuit this tall, and it could even extend beyond that if I want to. But the main thing on cutting biscuits, I see a lot of people where they go down and then they twist to like cut it. And when you do that, it's kind of like sealing the sides. It's pulling the dough down and kind of sealing the sides so that the biscuit's going to have a lot harder of a time rising. It's only going to rise to a certain amount, and then it's going to be kind of sealed, pulled down, and so it's going to keep it in, you know, about that tall, and it's not going to be able to extend as far as it could. So when I cut the biscuits, I just go straight down. I might have to do just a tiny, tiny little turn like that, but I'm not, you know, really aggressively turning the biscuit cutter. So this is tacky, and so a lot of times it sticks, so I'll just dip it in the flour and it makes a lot cleaner of a job. So let's go straight down. I might turn just a tiny bit, and then I'll pick it up with a spatula so I'm not distorting the shape. And then I'll put them on a parchment sheet lined cookie sheet, and I put them sides touching, but you can have them like an inch or so apart if you want to. I just like what it all looks like when they all come out. They're all kind of have risen together, and it's a nice just big pile of buttermilk biscuits. So we're going to get these cut and on the cookie sheet, and you're probably going to want to go preheat your oven at this point. So my oven's come up to temperature. I have preheated it at 450, and if you have watched any of my other tutorials on any kind of pastry, I've got the walnut filled pastry cookies and apple pie and the different pastry items. I stress the fact that you want your oven to be fully preheated. You don't want it to still be coming up. The reason for that is if you put these biscuits into an oven that is still preheating, they're going to start cooking at a lower temperature, and they're going to start melting the batter, and the biscuits are not going to be as tall. So you want the oven to be at a hot 450, and when you pop these in, it's going to instantly start cooking them. It's going to get the butter melted. It's going to be the cold butter that it's going to still be a cold piece of butter. It's going to start melting it. You're going to get that little steam burst, and that's going to cause them to rise up. Where if it's at an oven that's maybe 300, 350, it's still coming up to temperature, it's going to more like melt the butter, and it's not going to give that little steam burst. And so preheat the oven, and once it hits 450, you're going to put these in, and they should only take about 8 to 10 minutes to cook. So that's how easy it is. Buttermilk biscuits really aren't that hard to make. They're pretty delicious for the little amount of work that you put into them. And then you can just serve them with dinner with butter and honey, or you can put them under gravy and have biscuits and gravy, which I'll probably be bringing gravy to my channel soon. And so just go ahead and click the link below, and you can get my printable recipe, and just follow along with my steps here. And if you run into any snags, comment below and ask me, and I will get back with you and try and help troubleshoot and help you that way, so that you can have a successful tray of biscuits. And once you get the hang of it, you'll be making them all the time, because they really are that delicious. So go ahead and subscribe and click the little bell so that you're notified every time I post. I do post here weekly, and so you're not going to want to miss any of my content. So go ahead and subscribe, and we'll see you next week.